Alrighty, good morning, everybody. Kind of the early bird special here. We have some strong and severe thunderstorms that we are tracking down around Louisiana this morning, a place that is very hot and humid, if you've ever been down there, especially in the summertime. But with that in mind, somewhat, I want to say unusual, but normally we have our severe weather outbreaks kind of in the afternoon or in the evening. But and sometimes, though, the atmospheric conditions can line up just right that we can have in the morning. And that's the case with this one. We are seeing kind of a strong line of thunderstorms. In fact, let me go ahead and show you the radar here. So, what do we got going on? We got ourselves kind of this strong line of thunderstorms here that runs all the way from about Natchez, Mississippi, going down through Zachary into Baton Rouge, and then heading all the way over to Lafayette and the New Iberia area, right near where the Tabasco headquarters or the Tabasco factory is there. All right. Anyways, for those of you who like hot sauce, there's your fun fact. I can't remember the name of the island though. I've been there, but I can't remember its name now. Anyways, moving rapidly along, this line of thunderstorms has a kind of this bowing feature here, a nice little squall line here. And right now, the estimated winds with this are about maybe up to 80 miles an hour. So, a little bit over hurricane force winds. Now, does that mean the entire line has 80-mile-an-hour winds? Maybe not necessarily, but certainly some pockets here and there of some very strong winds. But where this event also gets pretty interesting too is that what in terms of tornadic probabilities. Now, with lines like this, keep in mind that we can get tornadoes to develop sometimes in these lines. Ironically, there have been instances where sometimes it seems like the tornado winds are actually weaker than the straight line winds, but that's for a different day. Sometimes we get these little spin up tornadoes with these lines. However, the atmospheric conditions out ahead of this line are also favorable for some tornadoes. So, not only is there this straight line wind probability here with this main line coming through, but out ahead of that, we are seeing some storms that are kind of popping up, and at times they have been rotating. And again, what we're seeing is kind of a cold front trying to push its way through Louisiana, and there is a warm front, and there's kind of this, little window of opportunity to be seeing some strong thunderstorms, well, obviously with the line, but ahead of that, to see some additional strong storms that at times have been rotating a little bit there. Now, we did actually have a couple of tornado reports from around the Lake Charles area earlier on today, but right now, we don't actually have any active tornado warnings. We did have one up around the Centerville area in Mississippi not too long ago, but that one has since been allowed to expire. However, this is the main line right here. In fact, if we were to flip over and take a look at our velocity imagery here, now for those of you who have seen us do severe weather coverage, we've shown this quite a bit. It's very good for looking at the winds within a thunderstorm, and it's also very good for looking at rotation within a thunderstorm too. As a matter of fact, what this radar that you see on the right here is called, it's called the velocity radar, and it's kind of simple in the way it works, and that is it is detecting the wind speeds in one direction, in two different directions, either going away from the radar or going towards the radar. Greens are winds going towards the radar site, which in this case is down around the Baton Rouge area, and reds are winds going away from the radar site, which in this case is winds going away from the radar site. So right here is that line of storms. You can see it there. And take a look. We got these little pockets here, these kind of high bursts of some of these potentially up to 80-mile-an-hour wind gusts. Now, there has been some wind damage reports with this that go all the way back towards the border there with Texas. But in terms of the actual velocity here, sorry, that's what I'm looking down here at really quickly. I'm just trying to pull up some of these numbers here for you to kind of give an idea at least of what the radar is detecting. And we got some pockets north of Baton Rouge around 70, 75-mile-an-hour winds. We also have some additional pockets a little bit further south of about 80-mile-an-hour winds around this area. Mind you, we're probably looking a little higher up in the thunderstorm or a little closer, I guess, to the surface. Sorry, I tried it again. Wow, it's early, folks. All right. Down around this area, there's some indications maybe upwards of 80-mile-an-hour winds. But again, we're probably looking a little bit higher up in the storm where friction, even though still plays a little bit of a role, might not be quite as much as down to the surface. So either way, likely 70-mile-an-hour winds within this whole line. So what else is going on this morning? Well, as I mentioned, we are tracking, let me phrase this again. Again, it's early. All right, let's take a look here and see what we are watching. We got a trend to watch that is in effect, and again, that includes southern Louisiana as well as a good, or southern Louisiana as well as a good portion of southern and central Mississippi. Now, this trend to watch is in effect again as we're going to watch the storm line try to progress through. We could be seeing very well some additional storms developing, maybe around the Hadesburg area, going up to Jackson. But right now, in terms of the tornadic type of thunderstorms. We don't have any tornado warnings now, but there are a few storms that bear watching. Let's take a look at them, shall we? Introduce you to our main players. So, down around New Orleans. All right, well, there is one that is kind of rotating at least a little bit. It's kind of gone back and forth, a little bit of a hook here just south of the city of New Orleans itself, not too far away from West Wago and the Gretna area here. A little bit of a rotation notch. Again, no tornado warning on this. The rotation doesn't appear to be as strong right now, but still does give you an idea that some of these storms are rotating this morning. The other one we got is all the way up here, heading its way towards northwest of Slidell and over towards around the Covington area here. Again, once again, we're looking at southern Louisiana. All right, for those of you who like your geography. So here's Covington. We got this little storm right here to the east of Covington that is also trying to rotate a little bit here. And we're going to see what this storm maybe tries doing. Again, the atmosphere does support at least the possibility for a few tornadoes as we go through the next couple of hours. Meanwhile, kind of the main thing, though, is this kind of big line of storms here cutting its way through Baton Rouge, all the way back up towards, as mentioned, south of Vidalia. In Mississippi. So again, a little bit of a Boeing line here trying to push through. So it'll be interesting to watch here over the next, maybe hour or so how some of these storms do try to evolve. With that in mind, I have the airport sensor up here. We'll see what kind of winds we can get from it here. I do know that at about 8:31, it reported a gust of 39 miles an hour at the Baton Rouge airport. But again, that was probably right before that main burst of wind arrived. So we'll see what that ends up being here. Could be pretty interesting. In the meantime, here, pick it up here for you guys. I want to show you the latest weather map here. You got to give me a quick little second to pull it up. I got so many tabs open. That is the surface analysis. We'll get to that here in just a moment. Let me go ahead and get up our good friend, the surface map. I know, like I said, normally you guys see me during the evening and at night, but I know a little bit early for us here, but that's just the way that this severe weather event wanted to do it. It wanted to do it in the morning. So let's go ahead and take a little bit of a look. Of course, I'm kind of a big weather nerd. I set my schedule around severe weather events. So let's go ahead and we'll take a look here from our good friends over at the WPC. I'll go ahead and flip the old screen here for you guys so that you're able to see it. And we'll take a look here at the latest surface map. So what is going on? All right, well, as mentioned, we have this area of low pressure. Whoop, come on, let's get that shimmer in. We'll give it a second here. All righty, if we're able to get it up here. Let me quick second here. I want to see if I can get the tabs going good here. Looks like that is going to be not possible. All right, well, anyways. I'll just describe it for you. We have an area of low pressure that is making its way out of Beaumont, Texas, heading in towards the Lake Charles area. That area of low pressure will continue to intensify as we head our way through the day today. Again, it will kind of push a cold front across Louisiana later on today and eventually maybe into Mississippi. However, out ahead of that, there is a little bit of a warm front that is also there. And then, of course, wherever that warm front lifts north of is where we're going to be seeing, lifts north of, whoever's kind of below that is where that severe weather probability is going to be as we go throughout the day. So that's kind of a little bit of an explanation there, at least as to what is going on with that. All righty. Let's talk about a few other things, shall we? All right, well, we'll talk about a few other things. And those few other things that we are going to talk about here is, just give me a quick second. Just make sure we got everything ready. All righty. A few other things we're going to talk about. What's going to be happening later on as we go through the day today? Well, what's going to happen later on today is that this activity is going to continue to push its way across the Gulf Coast area, going through southern Mississippi and also through southern Alabama. Then we might see it try to making its way to the Florida Panhandle later on today. All right, let's talk about severe weather here, or let's talk about our latest tornado warning, and that is our good friend here, the storm that we were taking a look at just a few moments ago around the Covington area. This is it right here. Now, I mentioned that it had some rotation in it, and there's the rotation right now, not the strongest. but certainly a little bit better than it was looking a few scans ago. And this guy has been kind of going for a little bit here. In fact, if we kind of were to try looping this radar image, you'd see what I mean, how that circulation is just kind of generally slowly gotten itself better organized. Now, again, we are looking east here of Covington, north of Pearl River, and that is the area that we're going to be watching here. So again, this is kind of a little bit of a cluttered mess here. But if we were to take a look here at this particular storm, here's our supercell right here, and there is this little notch. And right around here is where will be seeing if there is tornado, it would likely be. Again, it's kind of deceiving sometimes when we look at these type of thunderstorms. A lot of times, people think that Trina would be where the center of the thunderstorm is or where the heavier precipitation is. But in terms of, supercell type of thunderstorms, that's not normally the case. As a matter of fact, Trina could, in some cases, be a couple miles away from all of that. And typically with the direction that these supercells go, I know, at least back when I was a kid back in the 90s, I remember, one of the big, common things was, if you have hail, then you're probably going to have a tornado right after that. Well, part of the reason or that, misconception came around is that, I mean, yes, you can have hail followed by a tornado. That does happen quite a bit. But it's because the hail tends to be further up in the storm, whereas the rotation is kind of further back, a couple miles away, if that makes any sense. So, and typically with the way that these storms kind of track, these supercells generally kind of have a similar structure, and they generally go from southwest to the north and to the east. So typically you get that hail, and then you might be followed up by that tornado in this case. Right now, I don't think there's really much hail with some of these storms. And that's not to say that there's not any, but it's not like yesterday when we were watching storms out across eastern Texas, central Texas, where they were having hail, over 2.5 inches wide. This situation probably going to be not necessarily, if there is hail, it might not be quite as much as that. But yeah, there you go. This is the area that we're watching. Not up here, right down here, this little hook here. Now, this tornado warning is in effect, and it goes into effect. So let's take a look. The storm is moving northeast about 30 miles an hour. It could be around McNeil around 9:10. And this tornado warning is in effect until 9:30 a.m. Again, little unusual to be seeing, this type of weather setup during the morning hours. Again, not unheard of, but typically we'd expect to be seeing this into the afternoon. But just the way things are going, and I will say that the storm kind of continues to look pretty nice here. Now, that being said, though, the rotation is about right here. It doesn't look like it has, really really gotten itself down to the lower levels at this time. It's certainly rotating, and it certainly has that structure appearance. But right now, it looks like it's still trying to do the last maybe step or so, and we'll see if it's able to do that. Because typically, when we look at this velocity type of radar imagery, that the one on the right here, what we're looking for is a really high values of kind of both colors right up on each other. And it's known, we call it in meteorology, we call it a couplet. I always just call it, two values right up against each other. That's always been what I've referred it to. But if you really wanted to know, it's called a couplet in radar terminology. And now, again, we are seeing it right here, but what we would tend to look for a lot of times is maybe a little bit more of just a somewhat more of a tightening here. Not to say that it's not doing anything. My guess is if you're looking at this, you're probably certainly seeing a wall cloud of some kind, and that wall cloud's probably rotating a little bit here. That being said, I want to pull up a couple of things here really quickly. That is certainly, it's certainly looking decent here on the radar imagery. Let's take a look at our good friend, the correlation coefficient. We've shown this a couple of times before, very handy for looking at tornadoes, what the correlation coefficient is, for those of you who don't already know. Let's say we have the dual pol radar has given us the opportunity that we can kind of detect the relative size of objects that the radar is detecting, one vertical, one horizontal beam. Now, if we're in a thunderstorm or any general situation, the radar beam is detecting objects that are pretty much the same size. Let's think of rain. Raindrops are all pretty much going to be generally the same size. So the radar says, hey, these are all the same size. They have a high correlation, all right? And for those of you who like statistics, correlation is, I'm trying to think of how to put this in a non-mathematical term, but it would be more or less the relation of everything to everything else. All right. Now what happens if we have a tornado? Well, we not only got rain, but now we got leaves, We got parts of trees, maybe roofs, maybe building, and so the objects are multiple sizes. I mean, there's a lot of different sizes these objects can be. So the correlation begins to dip. It begins to drop off and it becomes much lower. Again, there's not as much of a relation between all those objects that it is detecting, at least in terms of size. So a lot of times when we look at this radar imagery that you see here on the right, this is the correlation coefficient, when we start seeing a noticeable drop off in a certain area, it's a good indication that there could very well be rotation with, or there could very well be something on the ground in terms of tornadic activity, again, picking up that debris. So that is what we're looking for here. Right now, a little difficult to tell. Again, the area of rotation that we're watching is going to be right around this area, but those could just be maybe some, we'll see what that ends up being, but I don't think that's anything at the moment. Let's just double check here. Yes, still radar indicated, doesn't look like anything. And we tend to see, like I said, a really noticeable drop off. And again, it would kind of be circular shaped, as trails tend to be, not square shaped. They tend to be kind of circular shaped, at least if you're looking from the top down. All right, with that in mind, so we don't see anything right now here on this particular thing that would indicate there is anything on the ground. But again, not to say that there isn't. Now, keep in mind here, folks, too, you also got to keep in mind when it comes to looking at trails on radar, sometimes it depends upon where exactly you are on the radar image, where exactly the radar is in relation to what you're looking at, and exactly how strong that tornado would be too. Again, weak little spin up tornado might not necessarily show up quite as easily as, let's say, a big, large tornado. In fact, I remember last year when I was tracking the Rolling Fork tornado, we were getting debris signature, thousands of feet up in the air, which would tend to indicate a very strong tornado. Typically, you probably wouldn't see that with a spin-up tornado. So there's a lot of things you have to kind of keep in mind. All right, so this is our main storm right now. Again, we are looking near the Picayune, I cannot pronounce that town, north of Pearl River. This little town here, which you have to pardon me if I am butchering its name. My Louisiana French only goes so far. Picayune. Anyways, that's the nearest town right here. Again, this is kind of just to the southwest of it. And they are tracking this thing kind of northeasterly at about 30 miles an hour. So let me go ahead here and see if I can't get a little bit of a track on it here. Whoops, that's not what I want to do. Go away. All right. Let's see if we can't get a little bit of a track on it. We're going to take it northeast here. Again, it's going about 30 miles an hour, so we'll go ahead and time it up that way. Again, it's going to put it all the way up in maybe Richardson here in about the next 20 minutes, so we'll see if this circulation continues to hold on. Now, as mentioned, it is looking, like it's maintaining. This is certainly a mesocyclone here in this thunderstorm. And again, our supercells have mesocyclones. In fact, the ones that we were watching yesterday around the Austin, Texas area, even though they weren't dropping any tornadoes, they were certainly producing large hail, and those ones definitely had a mesocyclone in them that you could see. So supercells like to have that. It's just kind of the parent rotation in the thunderstorm. Meanwhile, we got our let me turn that off. Meanwhile, we got kind of our main line back here. It just passed its way through the Baton Rouge area. Let's see if we can't get another little report here. Not quite yet. Ooh, we're getting there. We should be getting a 45-mile-an-hour wind gust from the Baton Rouge airport about 15 minutes ago. We'll see maybe if it got anything higher than that. Meanwhile, this line is still being warned for 80-mile-an-hour winds. And let's take a little bit of a look at this particular guy. It's moving east at about 65 miles an hour. Typically, these fast-moving thunderstorms do have kind of a good amount of gusty winds with them. I'll kind of save you the explanation for that, but you can kind of think of it like this: fast-moving line of storms. Storms like to have wind with them anyway. I mean, typically we see breezy conditions in a thunderstorm. So now we've got that breeze on top of the fact that the storm itself is moving 65 miles an hour, so it kind of helps to enhance that a little bit. But as mentioned, about going into a lot of the generic scientific reasons behind it. All right, let's take a look here at this main line coming right up on Greensburg, Louisiana here. And I'm just going to actually kind of lay this thing out to the east a little bit. We'll take kind of a look here. This section going to be coming up on Greensburg here pretty much right about now. Roseland in about 15 minutes. Bolivar about 20 minutes. Stony Point about 25 minutes. And then maybe over towards the Pine Cliff area a little bit past a half hour or so, and then it's looking like it'll fix its way to go into Mississippi from there. All right, that's that portion of the main line of the storm. Again, we're not talking about this guy, we're talking about this main line. Let's take a look at the other section here, a little bit further down to the south. This is, we're going to track this one just generally to the east. It's kind of a line, and we'll see where this guy puts us. So it's going to put us in Livingston in about 10 minutes, Albany about 15 to 20 minutes, give or take, Springfield about 20 minutes, Wadesboro about 25 minutes, and then Hammond in about 25 minutes too. So those are a little bit similar, some population centers, than, of course, parts of the northern line. So again, just kind of a general approximation. We can kind of, if we would have had the ability, we'd be able to kind of do a little bit of a line, but that's not, we can't do that at the moment here. But again, so you get the idea. This whole line moving about 65 miles an hour, certainly very, very gusty on there. We haven't got any wind damage reports out of Baton Rouge yet. It looks like the heaviest winds might have just stayed north and south of it, ironically. There is some building damage in St. Francisville, but that could have possibly been potentially from that tornado warning earlier on. We'll have to see. We do have some power poles broken, as well as some tree limbs broken further back around St. Landry Parish, heading over towards Washington, and then even a little bit further back there. All right. That's at least in the straight line wind department, but I'm sure a lot of you here are here because you want to see tornadoes, or at least track tornadoes. So let's take a look here. Again, right now, our only tornado warning at this time is this guy near Picayune. Picayune. I know I'm butchering that, but like I said, or I'm sorry, that's not even Louisiana French. That's going to be Mississippi French. All right. I don't think that's an actual thing, but all right. Let's take a look here at this bad boy again. So this is kind of the main storm that we have been kind of following here. And again, it's got that little bit of a hook feature here. Still radar indicated. Let's take a look here. It's still trying to rotate, but sure at the moment doesn't look. Well, we'll have to kind of see. It is a little cluttered. We are looking a little far away from the radar. We'll see what this guy does here. But the other thing to keep in mind is that given this atmosphere, anywhere we can get a storm kind of a little bit by itself, at least its inflow by itself, could rotate. Again, we had that one down around the New Orleans area. Right about here, no tornado warning on that, but you can see it does have at least a little bit of rotation with it. And then if we were to kind of go a little bit further out, we can see that sometimes we do get little spin ups on this particular, on these, kind of lines of thunderstorms here. Look for little notches, and again, these little spin ups right now. We would be looking for something just to the east of the Greensburg. Doesn't look like we see anything at the moment east of Greensburg, but it'd be right along the line here where we'd be watching, especially on this portion of the line, on the northern portions, especially where it begins to kind of curve backwards, is oftentimes kind of a good area for seeing some spin up activity. But otherwise, it is, like I said, just mainly some straight line winds, with, again, the possibility for some pockets of winds, maybe upwards of about 80 miles an hour or so. So certainly quite interesting nonetheless. And as mentioned, as we go through the morning and into the afternoon, we're going to watch as this line kind of continues to push its way to the east, and then eventually into, as mentioned, parts of Mississippi. And then maybe we'll be watching it as it heads towards Mobile, and then maybe over towards parts of the Florida Panhandle. Turning watch, as mentioned, is in effect, and again, this does include a good portion of the southern Mississippi as well as central Mississippi, including Jackson, including Meridian, including Hadesburg, Laurel, Waynesboro, and Philadelphia, Mississippi. Not Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Philadelphia, Mississippi. All right, let's take a look at this guy here. Does look like we might be seeing a little bit of a tightening here. Might have a little bit of a downdraft here. That's what this signature kind of appears to be. And sometimes these downdrafts, these kind of rear flank ones, do kind of help sometimes with initiating tornado development. At least so it's theorized. Wow, let me try that again. Depending upon the level of research you've done into it, but it does here that that might be a little bit what this is why we're seeing this little bit of a shape here. So might be interesting to kind of watch this section right here. Now, again, this is coming right up on Picayune, and as mentioned, nothing on the ground at this time. Yeah, still radar indicated. We'll see what that thing maybe tries doing here. Again, we've been watching it for the past few scans, and as mentioned, it's there's multiple steps a thunderstorm has to do before it can produce a tornado. This one probably only has about one or two more steps left to go, and that mainly being actually producing the tornado. So uh, for what it's worth there. I will say it kind of lost a little bit of that hook signature here, but keep in mind though, and this is one thing I do want to point out, especially when we're looking at storms in the deep south. The supercells tend to not always be quite as defined, or at least as precise looking, because there's so much moisture. So they kind of jokingly sometimes we see what's known as a kidney bean shape rather than the hook echo that we would expect to be seeing in other parts of the country. Down deep south tends to be a lot more precipitation, a lot more moisture in the atmosphere, and so precipitation is a bit heavier, and we tend to see it not necessarily looking quite as prominent. I guess if that makes any sense. Again, without going into the real specifics of it. We'll also keep an eye on this area down here, see if we can get any notches kind of coming up. Or the other thing too to keep in mind here with this situation, for anyone who's been following, East Texas and Louisiana and Mississippi over the past couple of days, they have been getting quite a bit of rain. I mean, quite a bit of rain. It's been very active past few days weather-wise for them in this area. I think some reports anywhere from 2 to 7 inches of rain. So not only that, but now they're getting more rain. So the one thing to keep in mind here too is and again, we're probably not going to talk much about it to be honest, but flash flooding is certainly going to be a thing across parts of Louisiana and Mississippi this morning. Just given how much rain's going through, maybe not quite as much further off towards the east around southern Alabama and parts of the Florida Panhandle. However, that being said, uh, see how much rain's already happening, and again, there could be more rain and storms over some of these areas. So it's pretty flat. If you ever been around that area, it's actually, I mean, honestly, parts of it is honestly just looks like a river or a floodplain anyway. So it does flood quite a bit down there anyway. But certainly adding to that possibility, we'll see here what some of our rainfall totals. In fact, let me just take a peek here of how we've done at Baton Rouge over the past let's say 20 minutes have gotten about an inch of rain, about almost up to an inch of rain around at the Baton Rouge airport. Yeah, so certainly getting some precipitation there. Almost like they're at about 9/10 of an inch of rain since 8:30 Central Time. So only about a half hour. That's quite a bit of rain, and if you've ever seen rainfall rates that high before, believe me, things get flooded pretty quickly when you're dealing with that, especially if you're driving through it. Alrighty, so again, we're continuing to watch this little area of rotation right here around the Picayune area. Just across state lines, actually, this is going to be in parts of Mississippi. So we'll kind of watch that and see exactly what it's going to do here. Like I said, it still has that signature there. Oh man, like I said, it's wanting to, but it's not quite as strong, quite as vibrant as what we saw at a few moments ago. Here's the latest radar scan. We're still seeing that hook there, though. It's pretty much right up on the northwest side here of Picayune, and eventually could be heading its way up towards Poplarville, Mississippi. That being said, we'll have to see if it holds out. Again, there's a lot of activity around here, and I think what we're also going to be dealing with, much like what we kind of had to deal with last week when we were taking a look at severe weather, is when you have so much activity, sometimes it begins to run into each other. And Hollywood would like to say, well, that it will form a mega tornado. Okay, not always. You have too much activity begins to run into each other. It just begins to throw everything off, and you end up with a big blob of heavy rain rather than big organized severe weather events. And just looking at this particular radar again, we're in the deep south, folks. And like I said, for anybody who hasn't been down there before, it is humid. I mean, it is just humid. Oh man. It's hot and it is humid. In fact, it's I was down there. It stormed and it was, I mean, very very heavy rain, but it still feels humid even after the fact. There's not really much of a cool down. So, anyways, there's obviously it tends to be a lot of precipitation when there is severe weather events down in the deep south. Uh, you don't want them to always run into each other because, like I said, that'll begin to upset things. And believe it or not, as much as we talk about how strong tornadoes are, keep in mind that just like hurricanes, they're actually incredibly fragile. It doesn't take much to throw them off. Hurricanes, all you need is a little bit of wind shear or ocean temperatures that are just slightly below the threshold, and you could, I mean, or land. Land is another thing that weakens hurricanes. Um, Again, we have seen times where they weaken pretty quickly. Tornadoes can be the same way. Uh, just one little interference, one bit of the wind shear off or something like that, or temperature drops just a little bit in the environment that it's in, and it can really put it to an end there. So, as strong as both tornadoes and hurricanes, keep in mind they're incredibly fragile. This is not a hurricane. These are just tornadoes. All right, we're not even close to hurricane season yet. Unless you're out in the Pacific, in which case it's almost always hurricane season in the West Pacific. But that said, the other thing, like I said, to keep in mind here is we got this main line, and what I've been kind of trying to keep an eye on too is to see if we can get any little spin ups on this particular line here. Just right now, it doesn't seem to have many jagged edges. We kind of look for these little kinks in the line. Right now, it does not necessarily appear to have many of those, but here's the interesting thing. It's coming right up on the radar site in Hammond. And so we are going to get a pretty good look at this line as it does come through. Now, with the amount of precipitation, though, I will say, sometimes in very heavy precipitation, when it goes right over a radar site, it can kind of uh, give this illusion uh, around the whole radar coverage's area of a decrease in overall precipitation, not by much, but it is kind of interesting. And if we are able to see that on this particular one, I'll point it out to you. But that does sometimes kind of for like a brief minute, just kind of make the radar imagery look like things have quieted down just a smidge. But it only lasts for like a couple of scans. Anyways, we can go on about that. Uh, Man, this thing is still. I mean, I will say it does not look like it's quite as strong, and I think there's just been so much interference now with this activity coming in that it could be kind of having a little bit of a hard time. As far as Agar down around New Orleans here, it's just on the east side of New Orleans, a little bit of a notch there, but heading its way now to the Bio Savage National Wildlife Refuge. The rotation area is just passing just southeast of the New Orleans airport there. And again, this is not a very strong rotation, but it is still there nonetheless. Potentially, if you were there, maybe you might see a little bit of a wall cloud, maybe very slowly rotating. I will say this area here around Laplace is starting to look pretty nice. This little notch right here. The only problem with this thing as it heads over Lake Pontchartrain is this activity right here. And my concern is that even though this is trying to get itself maybe a bit organized, I will say over the past couple of scans, it's starting to look a little bit, somewhat a little bit more pronounced. This is what would concern me right here. Some of this rain that could interfere with the inflow. Now, mind you, regardless, even if this thing did start to look pretty good, it's right over Lake Pontchartrain. So it's not exactly over land per se. And so we'll see over the next couple of radar scans what this does here. Let's see if we can't maybe get a closer look at it here. This is going to be a more localized radar, but let's see if we can't take a look at it here on the velocity imagery. Oh yeah, this thing has certainly got a little bit of rotation. In fact, this is actually kind of cool. You can see it here, even though there might not be anything, on the ground, or there might be a little bit of rotation. But now, as soon as I said it, the next scans came in, but you can kind of see there's some of that inflow. Here's the winds going away from the radar. Again, this is the radar. This particular radar is right here, south of Laplace. These are the winds going away from the radar, and here's the winds going towards the radar. So you can see a little bit of the inflow kind of showing up there, vaguely. So there's that. Let's see, what else do we got